Part 115. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1143. Mu Yangling held the mirror and looked at himself for a long time, and finally asked Chi Heiran uncertainly, "Am I old?" Chi Heiran shook his head again and again, "Not old at all." Mu Yangling rubbed the corner of his eyes, "I think it's okay too, but why are you going to be a grandmother?" Chi Heiran secretly glanced at the mirror from behind her, and sighed a little, "I don't think we are getting old, but the children are growing too fast." Mu Yangling couldn't help worrying, "What about Xiao Xiang's marriage? Do you really want me to choose a wife for them?" She never thought about choosing a wife for her son. She and Chi Heiran got together naturally, and because of the memories of her previous life, she always felt that falling in love was something for young couples. But now the son is obviously not enlightened, and there are such things as male and female defense in this era. Can he really find a wife by relying on his son? What are you talking about? You are their mother, so the daughter-in-law is naturally up to you to decide. The parents' order and the matchmaker's words. Chi Heiran made up his mind and felt that they were completely scaring himself. Is this still true? There are 5 years of work. If not, he will get married later, we will find him slowly, and we will always find a good one. It's appropriate, what's the use if it's good or not? Yes, it is suitable. Chi Heiran decided to go to the palace tomorrow to chat with his sister-in-law. She wants to find a princess for Xiaobao, and there must be many candidates in her hand. When the time comes, I will get a list from her and give it to a spiritual investigation. Both husband and wife had complicated thoughts tonight, so they lay in bed and did not fall asleep. Fortunately, the next day was New Year's Day and there was no morning meeting, so they could sleep in without worry. After a while, the husband and wife sighed together, "The child grows up too fast." Chi Heiran said in a low voice, "I think I'm quite young." He held back for a long time before he dared to say it. "We are young." Mu Yangling agreed very much. She turned 30 after the new year, and Chi Heiran was only 33. There are many people who got married at this time in the previous life. It is ancient, but it does not look old because it is well maintained. Chi Heiran saw that Aling had the same opinion as himself, and immediately turned over and hugged her. "Just tell me, you are still young, so why do you feel like you want to be a grandfather?" "You are right, the age of marriage has to be pushed back a bit. Otherwise, wouldn't he be a grandfather in 2 or 3 years? At this rate, he will be a great-grandfather in 18 years. When he thinks of a child like a little leopard or a pearl chasing after him and calling him great-grandfather, Chi Heiran feels that his whole life is going to be bad." Mu Yangling's brainwaves miraculously overlapped with Chi Heiran's, and there was also a flash in his mind of 2 little kids chasing her and calling her great-grandmother, and they couldn't help laughing on Chi Heiran's chest. The couple adjusted for one night, and the next day they threw away the weird feeling of being a grandmother. The 2 of them slept until the sun was up, and after washing up, Little Bear led a group of younger brothers and ran in, bowing to his parents, "I wish the father and mother have today every year, and every year have the present. Happy New Year." After the words of congratulations, I reached out to my parents. The little leopard and Beizu in round clothes also clasped their fists behind the tiger head and the little lion. Because they were too thickly dressed, they almost stumbled when they bent down. Chi Heiran's mood immediately improved, and he waved his big hand and said, "Daddy will give you a big red envelope today." The children cheered and looked at Mu Yangling eagerly. Mu Yangling also said, "My red envelope is also big." The children took Mu Yangling's red envelope first, and then followed Chi Heiran to the study room, euphemistically saying, "Serve Daddy's pen and ink, and show a little filial piety." Chi Heiran looked at the lead bear with disdain. "Since I said I would give you big red envelopes, I won't break my promise." "We are really going to serve you," Little Bear still emphasized. Chi Heiran hummed twice, and led them to the study. Hutu and the little lion walked behind and bit their ears. Daddy's monthly money is not enough every month, can he really give us big red envelopes? Hutu asked questioningly. The little lion lowered his voice and said, Daddy must have hidden his private money. Although the voices of the two children were low, Chi Heiran and Xiaoxiang had profound internal strength, and the difference between them was not far away, so they heard every word without missing a word. Chi Heiran's face turned dark, Xiaoxiang lowered his head and smiled secretly. Because it was the first month of the month, Chi Heiran couldn't lose his temper, so he could only give the two brats a glance, and then quickly walk to the study with the little leopard and Beizu in his arms. Chi Heiran's red envelope was wrapped with Mu Yangling's help, and inside are some auspicious gold and silver nudes. The most valuable is the 5 tails of gold nude, which is a red envelope for nephews. It is not too much, but it is just a good omen. In fact, most of the lucky money they give to close nephews is some precious objects, such as jade, seals or other little things. But this group of boys obviously don't care about these items, because the things given by the elders cannot be sold, and these brats obviously prefer cash. The New Year's money is naturally good if it suits what you like. Chi Heiran walked to a bookshelf and removed a few books, and took out a box from the back. It was not big, but his hands sank. Chi Heiran turned his head and glanced at his sons and daughters who stared at him with wide eyes, and hummed softly. One sentence. Do you really think he is Yu Yueguang's pauper? Chi Heiran proudly put the box on the table, and said to the children, you have to keep this matter a secret from my father and me. If you promise, you will have a big red envelope this year. If you don't agree, he. Several children nodded repeatedly, expressing that they would firmly keep the secret for him. Chi Heiran opened it, and there was a box full of gold inside. The sun shone on the gold and almost blinded the children's eyes. Chi Heiran generously distributed 20 taels of gold to each person, and half of a box went away in one go. Seeing that his father didn't feel distressed at all, Xiaoxiang knew that he must have something else hidden. He rolled his eyes and asked tentatively, Father, if mother accidentally finds out about this, will your private money be returned, can you keep it? Chi Heiran had an expression of you look down on me too much, your father and I still have 1 or 2 small businesses in our hands, no matter how bad it is, now that it's Chinese New Year, don't pay too much filial piety. Hutu hugged the gold he got and shouted, Father, you dare to accept bribes. The little lion made up the knife, how dare you do business on your own? Little Xiang whispered, Mom will confiscate it. Humph, I asked Uncle Fan for the money, so go and sue your mother. Little bear /U0026 tiger-headed lion. Little leopard and Beizu clapped their hands and said, Daddy is amazing, he can get money from Uncle Fan. Chi Heiran was embarrassed, and asked, why can't I get the money from your Uncle Fan? The little leopard shouted, Uncle Fan is very mean, no one can get money from him. Beizu, Uncle Fan doesn't have a daughter yet, let alone know how to spend money. Chi Heiran was confused and didn't understand how they came to such a conclusion. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1144. Don't go out on the first day of the Lunar New Year. Although there are no elderly elders in the palace, Chi Heiran still intends to follow this rule to sit at home for a day, so as to secretly live this half-day leisure life. But Fan Zijian didn't have this plan, so he brought his 2 children back from Fan's mansion to visit after breakfast. Chi Heiran knew that he was avoiding Fan Siwen, and was happy to receive him, but he just couldn't help being mean, and when he welcomed him in, he couldn't help saying, fortunately, Aling made a lot of food last night, and there was a lot left over. Otherwise, I really have nothing to eat to entertain you if you big family come to the door. Fan Zijian's head was full of black lines. I really don't know that you plan to abide by the rule of no killing, eat old food, or should I leave now? Chi Heiran hurriedly pulled him back, and said with a playful smile, aren't I just joking with you? I don't have a daughter, and I spend less money. Is it a joke to be stingy? Fan Zijan asked angrily. If you don't do things ahead of time, I really forgot. How can I be stingy? Being stingy can be your treasury. Can you borrowing so much money? Also, why don't you spend money if you don't have a daughter? Originally, I thought about questioning him again today, but I couldn't bear Chi-Heiran's meanness, and Fan Zijan questioned him like a cannonball. Chi-Heiran was sweating profusely. Fan Zijan snorted coldly, shook his sleeves and walked in. Chi-Heiran hurriedly grabbed the little bear who was about to go in, and asked in a low voice, "How did you, Uncle Fan, know what happened in the morning?" Little Xiong looked at his father sympathetically. Hutu and the others compared New Year's money with Xiaoan and Ziofu, and sent a message with carrier pigeons, saying that you gave them a big red envelope, and accidentally leaked the words. Chi-Heiran was indignant. Why are these two brats talking out everything, blinding my two big red envelopes for nothing, and is that how carrier pigeons are used? The distance of only a few streets uses carrier pigeons to deliver messages. Little Xiong continued, Xiaoan told me that Uncle Fan and Grandpa Fan had a bad face early in the morning, that's why Uncle Fan brought Xiaoan and Xiaofu to our house. Well, he hit the muzzle of the gun when he was cooperating, which happened to be a punching bag. Chi-Heiran scratched his head, finally pushed his eldest son and said, "Go ask your mother for the Xifen wine stored in the cellar, and just say that I will buy you Uncle Fan, hurry up." There are only 2 altars of Xifen wine stored in the cellar, which were copied from the Dajin Palace. They are 20 years old. Xifen wine aged 20 to 30 years is the most mellow, fragrant, and strongest, and the best preserved in the Dajin Palace. However, for more than a dozen altars, the other ages were either high or low, or they were not well preserved, and Qi Ziyuan distributed them to the heroes on the spot. Of the remaining dozen altars, Qi Ziyuan kept 3 altars for himself, gave 2 altars to Chi-Heiran, 2 altars to Zijan, and gave the rest to General Yuan and others. Fan Zijan's 2 jars were drank up by Chi-Heiran not long after he got them, but his own 2 jars were kept away as treasures and he was reluctant to drink them. Mu Yangling thought that he would not be willing to drink it until he was 30 years old. Hearing that Xiao Xiong said yes, she looked at him suspiciously. She took the key and went to the cellar to get it in person until she confirmed that it was not the kid who wanted to drink it secretly. Liquor. Why is your father so willing? He made you angry with Uncle Fan. Mu Yangling was not sure how much he had to do wrong to be willing to take out these 2 jugs of wine. Little Xiong chuckled, and told what happened this morning. He didn't care at all about exposing his father's private money. He didn't think his father's private money could be hidden from his mother. Sure enough, Mu Yangling didn't pay attention to the private money at all, but asked curiously, why did the tiger head and the little lion say that? Your Uncle Fan is usually very generous to you, and what does spending money have to do with whether you have a daughter? Little Xiong smiled and said, Uncle Fan has the title of King of Hell with Jade Face in the court. It is said that he has a lot of money but is stingy. He keeps the money and silver in the household department very tightly. The amount declared by each department is always returned. It's good to set aside half of it, and they won't report up to a third of it. It's really too difficult to extract money from Uncle Fan. Mu Yangling laughed out loud for a while, and then said seriously to Little Bear, you are not stingy, Uncle Fan. If you want to say who knows the most about prices in this world, it is you, Uncle Fan. He knows all kinds of things. It is involved, and it is an official of the Ministry of Household Affairs. Since he called back, it shows how much water the declarations of those people have. Speaking of which, you, Uncle Fan, are much more tolerant than your father. He can refund half or even 2/3 of the amount. It can be seen how much water has been mixed up in the expenses declared by the various ministries. If you change your father, dial it down, people cut it first. So don't say such things again. Be careful that your father knows the reason and beats you. Little Xiong didn't expect there to be so many twists and turns, so he couldn't help frowning. Then if the reviewers aren't as good as Uncle Fan, wouldn't they have been fooled by those officials? Mu Yangling smiled and said, not everyone can review these things in the Ministry of Household Affairs, and the Ministry of Officials and Yushitai are not vegetarians, but they will not be as tight as you, Uncle Fan. Mu Yangling personally delivered the wine to the two of them. Fan Zijin was drinking tea with Erlang's legs crossed. Qi Heiran was sweating profusely, explaining that those two sentences were really not what he taught the children. He really didn't know why the lion said that. Fan Zijin snorted softly. The presence of the old god showed that he was stingy, so he asked Qi Heiran to replace the debt he owed, and asked Qi Heiran after a while, why can't I spend money if I don't have a daughter? Seeing that their father's forehead was sweating, Hutu and Xiaoshi couldn't bear it. They rushed forward and explained, my father said that he will prepare a lot of dowry for my sister, and spend a lot of money every year to buy things for storage. My mother said that people with daughters do this, and they have to prepare a dowry since they were young. Little Lion added, we have to use half of our family's money to prepare a dowry for my younger sister. Second uncle, you don't need to spend money if you don't have a girl. You hide all the money in the bed. You are stingy, how can you be willing to give the money to my father? Qi Heiran didn't have time to cover Hutu's mouth, he could only look at Fan Zijin. Fan Zijin was completely dumbfounded, staring blankly at the tiger head in front of him. He felt that this kid overlapped with the stupid Qi Heiran more than 20 years ago. Fan Zijin's mood immediately improved, and he gave Qi Heiran a sympathetic look, patted him on the shoulder and said, so you are like you, then you have a long way to go, and you have worked hard. After all, turn around and leave. Mu Yangling was coming in with a wine jar, saw it and said with a smile, I have ordered someone to prepare meals, and I have brought you wine. If you leave at this time, will my work be in vain? Fan Zijin thought that he didn't know where to go after leaving here, so he turned around and went to the flower hall with Mu Yangling. Qi Heiran had already come to his senses, glared at his son, and angrily followed behind the two of them. The tiger head and the little lion were confused, and hurriedly stopped Xiaoan, who was about to leave. What do you mean by your father's words? Xiaoan gave Hutu a sympathetic look, and said, my father said that you are as stupid as your father. Your father wants to raise you up and make you sensible. The task is heavy and the road is difficult but long. Hutu was sad, I'm not stupid, does my dad think I'm stupid too? The little lion immediately comforted him, no, Daddy is expressing his indignation. Uncle Fan said you look like Daddy, so do you think Daddy is stupid? The tiger tilted his head, thinking that what the little lion said made sense. He snorted and said, I will become a general just like my father in the future, let Uncle Fan see if I am stupid or not. Humph, can a fool be a general? Fool, can you read and write like me, and have strong martial arts? You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1145. Fan Zijin came from Fan Manor, and his relationship with Fan Siwen has been good or bad all these years. When he was not in the capital, he sent the festival gifts to Fan Mansion on time. There was a lot of courtesy that should be given, but there was nothing extra. When I was in the capital, I went back to Fan Mansion for a meal during the holidays. When I was not happy to see Fan Siwen, I simply went to the palace to spend time with Qi Ziyuan and the others. Qi Ziyuan was also willing to help him cover up, but Fan Siwen had nothing to do with him. It's not that he doesn't want to use his status to suppress him, among other things, as long as he complains of illness, Fan Zijin will have to go back to the mansion to serve him day and night, but what's the use? His original intention was to bring the relationship between father and son closer, but in this way, he pushed his son further away. This son is very rich, and he smiled when he was facing you, but when he turned around, he used all kinds of methods on Zi Xiao, and it was he who suffered in the end. Fan Siwen watched his second son soar, from a jinchi to a duke, and then from a duke to a county king, a military advisor, a magistrate, and a minister of the household department. He could almost foresee that Fan Zijian's next official position would be the minister of the household department. Buletin Shangshu worshipped in Xianga, and his name was left in history. And his eldest son is still just a prison student, and he can't rely on him to become an official, nor can he borrow the influence of the second son, and even the entire Fan family is trampled under his feet. Fan Siwen feels as uncomfortable as a fire. However, no matter what he did, the Xia family would stop him. Now in the Fan family, Xia's words are more effective than him, and Xia's wholeheartedly helping Fan Zijian. Even when he goes out to take a car, he has to explain where he is going. Fan Siwen was already full of anger, but when he saw Xiaoan, who was well raised and beautiful early in the morning, and then saw the elder grandson of brother Xiaoan who was a little dodgy, he couldn't help accusing Fan Zijian of not caring about the clan, disregarding brotherhood. They are all the kings of the county, but their own brother is still a prison student who can't find a way to become an official. Although Fan Zijian finally stopped the conversation, his mood was still affected. After breakfast, he went to the study to be bored for a while, and then took his two sons out. Fan Zijian and his two sons were very comfortable in the palace. If it wasn't bad for him to stay outside on the first day of junior high school, he really wanted to live here tonight. And the poor little Xia family had to stay to serve her in-laws, and she was still struggling in the Fan mansion, but she couldn't suffer with Xia's presence. Fan Zijian saw that there were a lot of food on the table, and Qi Heiran even brought out the two most precious jars of wine, and immediately said cheerfully, "Not bad, it looks good. Greeting Mu Yangling, check if there is any fresh mutton or beef left, cut it into thin slices and add some melons and vegetables, let's eat it in a pot, it will be hot." Hudu came in with his head down, and he was revived immediately after hearing the words. The negative emotions hit by Uncle Fan and his father disappeared immediately, and he raised his hand and shouted, I know, the kitchen killed 2 sheep yesterday and put them in its freezing under the eaves, and the wild deer that my elder brother and my father went to hunt in the mountains a few days ago, the farm sends fresh vegetables to the mansion every day, and today's must have arrived." Fan Zijian grabbed the chopsticks for a moment, looked at the drooling tiger head, and couldn't help laughing. Qi Heiran also scolded with a smile, "Are you staring at the kitchen every day? You know better than your mother." The little lion immediately said that he also knew, and said triumphantly, "We plan to go outside to gather around a pot after the snow falls, and enjoy the snow while eating. Naturally, we must inquire about the delicious food in the kitchen in advance." Xiaoan nodded to show that he also knew about the kitchen of the fourth uncle's house. Qi Heiran looked at the light snow falling outside, then lowered his head to look at the dishes on the table, and immediately said, "Then set up 2 tables, one at Tingyukshuan and the other at Aome Garden. Eat in Tingyukshuan, then go to Aomewan. Kingzi is a stream that flows through the palace and flows into the Great Lakes. The water comes from the mountains, and the water quality is clear and untainted. It had no name before, and even Qin Fang did not name this river when he built the Qin Xiangfu in the previous dynasty. Compared with this small stream, the big lake in Fuku is more eye-catching. But Mu Yangling liked this creek more, and even Basil loved it more than the big lake, and often ran here when the weather was hot. Qi Heiran built a pavilion in the northwest of Aome Garden, beside the stream. Tingyukshuan has 2 floors. 4 large windows are opened on the second floor, and the first floor is open on all sides. It is a good place for viewing the scenery. The weather is cold at this time, so listening to Yukshuan is not a good choice, but if you hang see-through curtains on the 4 windows on the second floor, you won't feel cold when eating a pot with a fire. And sitting on the second floor, you can not only see the clear stream downstairs, but also the big lake in the distance. If you are tired of watching the water, you can turn around and look at the plums in the Aome garden on the other side, and sit in the plum garden and eat the pot with snowflakes on it. Little brats. Chi-Heiran did what he said, and immediately ordered someone to do it. Fan Zijian knew that he wanted to see the children suffer, so he glanced at him with a half-smile, but didn't stop him. It's different when there are servants at home. Chi-Heiran just said a word, and half a quarter of an hour later, he walked slowly to Ting Yuxuan. When he got there, Lichun and Guyu took people to get everything ready. They thoughtfully put some cooked food on the table, charcoal pots were placed in the four corners of the second floor, and the curtains were put down, not to mention that the room was warm as spring, and the temperature outside was more than 10 degrees higher than outside. And Xiaoxiang and the others went to Aome garden, keeping the pot of water boiling against the light snow falling from the sky. Chi-Heiran didn't let the twins join in the fun, and asked people to put the two couches together, spread a thick blanket, and pour the toys on it for them to play. When Fan Zijian saw him, he brought Xiaofu over and asked him to play with Little Leopard and Beizu. Xiaofu likes children younger than him the most. When he sees Little Leopard and Beizu, he immediately forgets about his older brothers, and happily sits on the blanket with them to play. Chi-Heiran stood at the window and looked down at them, and saw that the children who were still drooling around the pot had all run away to play, or chased each other around the plum tree, or simply broke off the plum blossoms to put in the vase, and only the little bear he and Hutiou remained in the distance, drooling over the smoking pot. Chi-Heiran was slightly disappointed, and Mu Yangling smiled and said, "You really think they are simply greedy for hot pot? Except for Hutu who really wants to eat hot pot, the others are probably just looking for a reason to play." "That's right, do you think everyone is as obsessed as you are?" Fan Zijian sighed contentedly while putting things into the pot. "It's still comfortable here with you. I almost lost my appetite after eating breakfast this morning." Mu Yangling frowned. "Do you want me to ask someone to bring my cousin over? You can't be at ease, leave her alone in Fan's house to suffer." Fan Zijian curled his lips and said, "With my mother here, my father will not be jealous and will not run to his daughter-in-law to ask her to bring tea and water. Don't worry. But you should go to my house when you are in the third year of junior high school, and I will pay New Year's greetings early. Also go back to my duke's mansion as soon as possible." Fan Zijian's prince's mansion has not yet been built, and it is expected that he will not be able to move in until autumn, so he is still living in the original duke's mansion. "I only stay in Fan Manor until the third day of junior high," Fan Zijian said. "I don't want to be impeached by the censor after the new year, so I'd better move out early after the end of the year. The censor will definitely impeach him for being unfilial." Chi-Heiran nodded thoughtfully. "Okay, I'll go see my uncle and aunt in the third day of junior high school." Fan Zijian was satisfied. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1146. Xiaoan chose 2 beautiful plum blossoms and cut one, sent one to Ting Yuxuan, and placed the other in a bottle on their own table. Xiaoan and Xiaoxi ate hot pot while admiring the plum blossoms, and Xiaoxiang watched with great interest. Only Hutu paid the most attention to the food on the table, and devoted himself to eating hard. Fan Zijian stood in front of the window, looked down at the tiger's head, and then turned to look at Chi-Heiran, who was also hard-working, and couldn't help but burst out laughing. Mu Yangling looked up at him curiously, Chi-Heiran also looked at him blankly. Fan Zijian covered his mouth and coughed lightly, and asked, "Is it delicious?" Chi-Heiran nodded with narrowed eyes and said with a smile, "These mutton are all brought from the Northland, they are delicious, and the venison is also delicious, come and taste it." As Chi-Heiran spoke, he took the initiative to cook a few chopsticks of mutton for Fan Zijian. Fan Zijian's face was black, and he said, "I can't eat so much." Chi-Heiran thought so too. He loves to eat vegetables, so he immediately scooped up the mutton and put it in his bowl to serve him fresh vegetables again. Fan Zijian. Mu Yangling also looked at Chi Heiran speechlessly. Seeing Aling looking at him, Chi Heiran misunderstood, and immediately shared half of the mutton in his bowl with her, and asked with concern, "Would you like some venison? This is also delicious. If you like to eat hot pot, I will eat it tomorrow. Send someone to find some beef." Mu Yangling looked at the mutton in the bowl, then at Yin Yin, looked at her husband, nodded slightly, "It needs to be fatter." Fan Zijin looked at the couple who had already started discussing food, took a deep breath, told himself not to be angry, and scooped up the vegetables in the pot. Fan Zijin was indignant as he ate the overcooked vegetables. He knew that he had brought Xiao Xia out to see what kind of affection they would show. The group of people had enough to eat and drink, and the tiger head in the Aomei garden had already followed the little lion Xiaoan all over the garden, and the little bear didn't know where he went. Mu Yangling coaxed Xiaofu and the twins to sleep, wrapped the three children tightly and handed them to the nanny to carry them back to sleep. Chi Heiran and Fan Zijin were a little drowsy after eating and drinking, and were about to wave their hands back to the house to rest when someone came to report, "My lord, 2 foreigners came to visit with a post, saying that they are friends of the Lord, and the son has already passed away. I entertained you at the front, let the little one come and report." Chi Heiran was taken aback for a moment, then regained consciousness and asked, "Foreigner? Andre?" Mu Yangling frowned, "Are you here on New Year's Day?" Fan Zijin was equally displeased, and waved his hands, "Just say that the palace does not welcome guests on the first day of the new year." The servant looked at the prince and concubine. Chi Heiran yawned and said, "Let's go back like this, let the sun come back. Little bear is already refusing, what a joke, has anyone ever opened the door to welcome guests on the first day of the Lunar New Year?" The smile on Andre's face stiffened slightly. He knew about this custom, but he didn't know that Daki people would attach so much importance to this custom. He glanced at Antonio and saw that he still had a smile on his face, but his eyes were cold, and he knew that the noble duke was angry. Andre hurriedly said that they didn't know this custom, "Please forgive me for the offense," and asked for advice on when to come to visit. Andre said that they have very important things to discuss with Prince Rong, hoping that the sooner the better. Little Xiong raised his eyebrows and told him that the affairs of Western countries were under the control of the Ministry of Rights, and his father had no right to intervene. Andre had dealt with the Han people for a long time, and he knew that in the powerful class, everything could be treated with favor. He had approached many officials of Daki, and they all said that they could solve everything by looking for Prince Rong. Otherwise, he wouldn't have prepared such an important gift and came to visit. So Andre secretly expressed concern about the efficiency of the Ministry of Rights, and hoped that Xiao Xiong would allow them to meet Prince Rong. Some things should be discussed with Prince Rong. Xiao Xiong glanced over Antonio, who was looking at him with a smile, thought for a while and nodded and said, "Today I really can't open the door to welcome guests. If you two are in a hurry, come back tomorrow. I will ask the father to give you half an hour." Although Antonio was still smiling, he was very displeased in his heart. His status in the country was second only to His Majesty the King. When did he suffer such grievances? The door-to-door visit was actually turned away. So Antonio asked Little Bear with a half-smile before leaving, "I heard that King An is very capable. I wonder if I can meet him when I come over." Little Xiong looked at him in surprise, looked him up and down carefully, then turned to Andre and said, "Mr. An, if you are using your lord, well, it's not very comfortable, you can stay in the post to rest." Before Andre and Antonio could figure out the meaning of the sentence, Xiao Xiong looked at him sympathetically and said, "I just said that my Daki has a custom of not opening the door to welcome guests on the first day of the Lunar New Year. Same, so if you want to visit me, Uncle Fan, I'm afraid it will have to be another day." Antonio's face darkened, but he still couldn't hold back, and asked, "But I heard that the Prince of Anjun came to your mansion early in the morning." Little Xiong seemed to be stunned for a moment before realizing what they meant, and said with a smile, Your Majesty must have misunderstood something. Uncle Fan is a member of our family and is not considered a guest. Besides, Uncle Fan has Grandpa Fan on top of him. As long as he at home, fortune will not be lost. Not opening the door to welcome guests on the first day of the new year is of course just an excuse. Daki does have this custom, but whether to keep it depends on the individual and depends on the specific situation. For example, when they are in a good mood, it's okay to go out to visit a few familiar houses, but are these two foreigners familiar with them? Although Andre had known each other for several years, they were indeed unfamiliar. Xiao Xiang made nonsense with a smile. In short, he described this custom as a rule they must abide by, and this rule is subdivided. Naturally, a family or a family of relatives does not pay attention to hospitality, and they come to the door. Antonio's Chinese is not good. Communication with Xiao Xiang is half by listening, half by guessing, and if he doesn't understand, he needs to translate by Andre, so he was directly confused at this time. Seeing that Xiao Xiang said something solemnly, I really thought it was the custom. Although Andre was proficient in Chinese, he didn't know much about the customs of the Han people, so although he was dubious at this time, he chose to believe it when he saw that Xiang said it solemnly. Little Bear flicked the man away, and then turned back. After hearing the news, the three of Xiaoan could only see the backs of the two of them. Huda shouted, Wen Qian and the others still want to see these Westerners, brother, why did you drive them away? Little Bear patted him on the head, and said, Who said I drove them away? I'm asking them to come back tomorrow. Didn't Wen Qian want to see foreigners nearby? Minger told them to come to the mansion to see them, and they can watch as long as they want. How long? The little lion cheered and shouted, Finally, I have not broken my promise to them. I will ask someone to inform them. Xiaoan hurriedly grabbed him, It's so troublesome, let the carrier pigeon go directly, just like we communicated in the morning, it will take a quarter of an hour. The little lion thought the idea was good, and sighed, It is convenient to have carrier pigeons, so let's keep more pigeons and use them for communication. I know how to raise pigeons, but I don't know how to train them. We need to find someone who knows how to do it, Hu Tiou said with a serious face. The little lion and Xiaoan looked at him and hit him at the same time, I think you only know how to raise meat pigeons, so you can eat it. Little Xiang, who was left behind by the three. You think homing pigeons are Chinese cabbages on the street, and you raise a lot of them. The Reborn wife is farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1147. When the prince received the letter from Fei Ji, the expression on his face was blank for a moment, and then he gave the letter to Wen Di blankly, asking him to take it to his two younger brothers. Qi Wenqin and Qi Wenmai had already given up hope for close contact with Westerners, but they didn't expect the opportunity to come like this again, and they suddenly became excited. The two of them didn't dare to delay, and immediately went to ask their father for leave to leave the palace. Qi Xiaoyuan looked at his sons helplessly, What's so interesting about foreigners, haven't you seen them at the palace banquet? But Brother Huda said that foreigners have green eyes and blue eyes. They were so far away from us during the palace banquet. We can only see the difference in their clothes and hair. Where can we see the eyes? The two brothers looked at the father eagerly, and said in a low voice, The eldest brother and the second brother have seen those foreigners, and we want to see them too. So you quickly level up a bowl of water. Qi Xiaoyuan nodded helplessly, Let your eldest brother and second brother accompany you out, only go to your fourth uncle's, and you are not allowed to run around. The two children cheered, saluted their father carelessly, and ran out. Knowing that he can also go out of the palace on the second day of the Lunar New Year, Wen Chen decided to forgive his younger brothers for occupying the pigeons. I went back to my natal home on the second day of the Lunar New Year. The Xia family has no natal family, and Zhu's family is far away in Fujian, unable to go back, and Xiao Xia's natal family just happened to move to the capital, so Fan Zijan can only accompany his wife back to her natal family on this day. Zioan went to find her mother before falling asleep, and said apologetically, "Sir, he added extra homework before the holiday and asked me to learn crafts, but I've been playing like crazy for the past few days, and I only have a little clue. I don't know if I can take the holiday completed before." Xiao Xia felt distressed, and hurriedly hugged him and said, "Then you stay at home to do your homework tomorrow, and mother takes younger brother to grandparents' house. If there is not enough time, I will ask for 2 days of sick leave for you. Don't be so playful in the future, it's time to finish it, the homework must be completed on time." Xioxia chattered for a long time, Xiaoanan responded one by one, and finally said in a difficult way, "But grandpa's house is very noisy, and my cousins always come to me, I can't calm down at all. Mother, I think go to my fourth uncle's house to do my homework, there is my small study, and my fourth aunt is there, the tiger-head brothers dare not disturb me, if I don't understand anything, I can ask Mr. Qian." Xiao Xia thought of the 2 days when her father-in-law and her husband were fighting each other, and the house was never quiet for a moment. The children in the big house always ran behind Xiao An's buttocks, flattering them in front of them, and secretly bullying her when they turned their backs. "Zioan." Without even thinking about it, she said, "Okay, I'll take you to your fourth uncle's house tomorrow morning." Xiaoan secretly breathed a sigh of relief, and turned to see his father slowly closing the book and looking at him with a smile, his eyes were full of understanding. Xiaoan gave her father a flattering smile, and lowered her head to look at her toes. Fan Zijan put down his book, got up and said, "Okay, I'll take Xiaoan back to his yard, you should get ready to rest." Xiaoan walked out half a step behind his father, Fan Zijan sent him back to the room, picked up the textbook on his desk, looked at it, and asked, "Why don't you want to go to your grandfather's house? This kid is indeed learning art, and the master has indeed given him extra homework, but he checks his homework every day, and naturally knows that he has completed most of the art, and now there are 5 days before the end of the holiday, there is no need worry about not getting it done. So this kid lied because he didn't want to go to his grandfather's house." Fan Zijan didn't think he lied about not going to Xia's house because he wanted to play with Hutu and the others. Knowing his son, Amoruofu, this kid is not someone who forgets about business just because he is playing, let alone when he is not free to play with Hutu and the others. Fan Zijan looked at his son with piercing eyes, and Xiaoan couldn't panic at all. He lowered his head and pouted, "When I go to my grandparents' house, my aunt always asks my cousins to play with me, but I don't like to play with them." Xiaoan thought for a while and said, "I know they want me to marry my cousin or cousin, but I don't want to." Fan Zijan raised his eyebrows and asked with interest, "Why not?" Xiaoan curled her lips, "I don't like them, I like fourth aunt, and I will marry someone like that if I want to marry in the future." "Wait," Fan Zijan interrupted his son, and stared at him with wide eyes, "What kind of aesthetics do you have? What's so good about her? Even if you marry, you should marry your mother." Xiaoan looked at her father stubbornly. Fan Zijan insisted, "Your mother is gentle and kind, virtuous and capable, your fourth aunt. That's a hag." Concerned about his son being a junior, Fan Zijan didn't utter bad words after all, but his attitude was very obvious. He didn't like Mu Yangling like that. Xiaoan was very surprised, "Daddy, don't you like fourth aunt very much, why are you so opposed?" Fan Zijan couldn't help but rolled his eyes, "How did you know that I like your fourth aunt? If I like her, it's okay, your fourth uncle can't work hard with me." Xiaoan scratched her head, pondered over her words in distress, and said, "Didn't you always get along well with fourth aunt? Why don't you like her? I was looking at your fourth uncle's face. What's more, we grew up together and got along with each other for so many years. How can we talk about whether we like it or not? It's not that I live with her." Fan Zijan felt that if it wasn't for Qi Heiran, he will definitely not become friends with Mu Yangling. However, Xiaoan felt that his father was a dead duck with a hard mouth, and his words were too harsh, so he said directly, "Fourth aunt is also gentle, kind, virtuous, and more capable. I like her like that." Fan Zijian's chest heaved sharply twice, and he exhaled, "You are not yet 11 years old, it's too early to say what you like, and when you grow up, you will definitely not like fourth aunt again." Fan Zijian said earnestly to his son, "Don't just think that your fourth uncle and aunt are doing well now and think how wonderful your fourth aunt is. Your fourth uncle is suffering." Xiaoan was full of disbelief. "Fourth uncle is happy every day, I have never seen him suffer." "That's because you only saw the surface and didn't see the essence. Your fourth uncle can only be suppressed by your fourth aunt all his life." "How well can he live?" Fan Zijian scolded, "Look at him, how big is the little bear? He doesn't even have a concubine room around him." "You haven't either," Xiaoan answered quickly. "Who said I didn't? That's because you didn't remember it. When Dad was in Lingnan, he had a concubine's room. Besides, I have 2 concubines by my side. As for your fourth uncle, there is not even a maid by your side. They are all servants. Do you want to be oppressed by your wife for the rest of your life?" Xiaoan hesitated, "If I am willing." "You can't spend money at will," Fan Zijian quickly cut off his words. "Look at your fourth uncle, the monthly money is only 200 taels, and the money is spent before the middle of the month, so I dare not talk to your fourth aunt. Open your mouth, you can only take it from me, and then pay the monthly money next month when you are determined, and continue to borrow from me when you are not determined. I don't remember how much money your fourth uncle has borrowed from me for so many years." "Yes, as for how much is owed," Fan Zijian was silent for a moment, then shook his head, "I really don't remember how much, but it must be quite a lot. And since you were 8 years old, I don't want you to pay money from the account. Let me ask you, are you willing to live in such a tight life in the future?" Xiaoan hesitated even more. Fan Zijian was about to cheer in his heart, and continued to persuade with a serious face, "Son, what do you think of your kung fu? It's okay, it's not a problem to knock down 2 or 3 people. How does it compare to the tiger head?" Xiaoan shut up and didn't speak. "Is there even a comparison? You can tell with your eyes, it's naturally a tiger head." "Then how about your fourth aunt and Hudu?" Fan Zijian asked. "You want to find someone who is similar to your fourth aunt, and if you fight in the future, what will she do if she beats you? Dad's old arms and legs can't save you, can your Qinggong escape?" Xiaoan fell silent. Fan Zijian exhaled softly, patted his son on the shoulder and said, "Son, I know that you have been growing up in the palace and have admiration for your fourth aunt, but this is different from the feeling of marrying a wife and having children. Only one of your fourth aunt, and only one of your fourth uncle, and only someone like your fourth uncle can live with your fourth aunt." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1148. When Mu Yangling saw Xiaoan sneaking a look over again, he couldn't help being curious. A group of children were talking around Qi Wenqin and Qi Wenmai, telling them all kinds of strange habits and appearances of foreigners. Only Xiaoan sat quietly on the side, as if paying attention to Wenqin and the others, but sneaked a peek at the two from time to time. Seeing that the children were really arguing in a panic, Mu Yangling threw them all out. "Andre and the others haven't come yet, you go to the park to play first, and I'll send someone to call them when they come. The noise here is driving me crazy, it hurts." Mu Yangling called Xiaoan to stop, and said softly, "Can you stay and help fourth aunt pack up?" Xiaoan stayed with her head down, embarrassed to look at her. Mu Yangling pulled him aside, "Come talk to fourth aunt. The child was normal when he left yesterday afternoon, why did he come back like this after one night?" Mu Yangling was worried that Fan Siwen was acting like a demon again. Although it was true that Fan Zijian was very powerful, but with Fan Siwen's identity there, it was still very easy to overwhelm Fan Zijian. Mu Yangling was worried about Fan Zijian, so he couldn't help asking a few more questions. Is your father angry with your grandfather? Looking at the worried fourth aunt, Xiaoan felt ashamed instead of his father. The fourth aunt was so good, why did his father belittle her so much? Xiaoan grew up next to Mu Yangling since he was a child, and received her upbringing with Hutu and the others. It should be said that except for sleeping time, he was with Hutu and the others almost every day, and he also habitually looked for Mu Yang when he needed something. Ling solves. Mu Yangling said it was his fourth aunt, more like his mother. Xiaoan felt ashamed at this moment, and as soon as her head got hot, she told her what happened last night. After finishing speaking, Xiaoan regretted it. The fourth aunt knew that her father belittled her so much. Would she quarrel with her father, and would there be a rift between the two families? Xiaoan was thinking wildly, while Mu Yangling was a little speechless. She rubbed Xiaoan's head and said, "Okay, what's the big deal? Go out and play with Hutu and the others. It's just Oedipus complex, it's really not a big deal. When he grows up a bit, I'm afraid he will annoy these old ladies to death." Xiaoan's eyes widened, and she asked, "Aunt Si, are you not angry with me?" Mu Yangling was curious, "Why am I angry with you?" "Then you're not angry with my dad?" He said that about you." Mu Yangling waved his hand nonchalantly, "I'm used to it. Your father's mouth is really going to worry about it. It's still me who hurts. I only have a heart, liver, spleen, and lungs, so take care of yourself and don't worry about him." Xiaoan peeked at the fourth aunt, and asked in a low voice, "You are really not angry? He said that to you? Don't care about it in front of him, but quarrel behind his back, then can he come to play in the future?" Mu Yangling looked at his worried face, and immediately said with a smile, "Okay, if the fourth aunt says she can't be angry, she won't be angry. If I was really angry, I would have broken up with your father 800 years ago, and he is now the mouth is more poisonous, before." Mu Yangling shook his head. Xiaoan became interested, pestered her and asked, "Fourth aunt, I know that you, fourth uncle, and my father were childhood sweethearts, so did you play like Hutu and I when you were young? Why is my father so nice to fourth uncle? Treat you so badly?" Mu Yangling laughed, rubbed his head and said, "What's the matter? Your father and your fourth uncle knew each other when they were babies, but I didn't meet them until a long time later." Mu Yangling sighed, "Your father is extremely smart, he used all his sincerity on your fourth uncle, leaving others with suspicion, unless that person has a heart that is always fiery, otherwise he will not be able to cover your father. Let alone win his heart. When I met them for the first time, your father had a smile on his face. In fact, his inner strength is a hedgehog. Your fourth uncle has a hedgehog on his face, but his heart is smooth. He was wary of me at that time, and always felt that I was doing it on purpose. There are other plans to get close to them," Mu Yangling said with a smile, "so at that time I didn't like to play with your father, and I always looked for your fourth uncle when I had anything to do. Later, I started a joint workshop, and he always came to my house with your fourth uncle. Tooth fighting ceremony, this is how you get used to it." Xiaoan's eyes widened, and she listened carefully. "I was looking at fourth uncle at that time, otherwise I would have kicked him out long ago, eating my family's food and vegetables, but still dragging him like I owe him 500 taels of silver." Fan Zijian felt that he accepted Mu Yangling as a friend for Qi Heiran's sake, but on Mu Yangling's side, she was willing to accept Fan Zijian as a friend also for Qi Heiran's sake. Xiaoan pondered, "Fourth uncle is very good. It is also a skill to make two people who are hostile to each other become friends." Mu Yangling sighed, "Actually, your father is also difficult." Mu Yangling hesitated, but decided to explain to Xiaoan, "Your grandfather is too partial. He didn't live well since he was a child, but your fourth uncle is a big fool, except that he is always bullied when he is still good at fighting. He thinks he is older than your fourth uncle, and he also protects the calf. This character is gradually getting crooked. But he has a compassionate heart for you and Ziofu. He also treats his brothers, and he does his best for the country. Mu Yangling said against his will, he is a very good man. Xiao An's eyes sparkled, is my father so powerful? Mu Yangling nodded. Although Fan Zijian's character is not very good, let alone, he is smart and capable. Because of Qi Heiran's presence, so far his efforts have been in the right direction, so he has not done anything bad. Considering what he has done, he is indeed a good person and a great contributor to the Qi. Mu Yangling thought about it this way, and felt that the previous boasting was not so against his will. When Zioan saw her fourth aunt mentioning her grandfather, she couldn't help but tell her, "Grandpa always asked me to take my cousins out to play, but my father forbade me to hang out with them, and I didn't like to play with them either. They are very obedient in front of adults, but when the adults leave, they look at me with disgusting eyes and try to tease me together. They think I don't know, but in fact these are me and the little lion tiger to play with the rest. We played it a few years ago, I designed it to be smashed by adults, and in turn tricked them. My father threw face on the spot, my uncle caught my cousins and killed them really beat." Xiao An's face was still a little pale when he said this. The beating made his butt bleed, and my eldest cousin's face was swollen, but isn't he their father? How could he beat the child like this? Xiaoan was also beaten by Qi Heiran. When they were most naughty, Qi Heiran grabbed them and spanked them on his legs, but the thunder was loud and the rain was light. It sounded loud when they were beaten, but it didn't hurt very much. Just one click. The most serious time was when he helped the prince's brother escape from Beijing privately a few years ago. That time he was beaten with a board, but at that time, although his butt hurt, he didn't bleed. It only took 2 days for their buttocks to hurt after such a big disaster, but the eldest cousin and the others were directly beaten out of blood, which made him hide from them even now, for fear that they would blame him. Qi Heiran would still beat him, but Fan Zijian had never hit a child. After Xiaoan got into trouble, he was mostly punished for copying books and kneeling in the ancestral hall, but because he was not in good health, he didn't kneel in the ancestral hall for a long time, so he didn't quite understand why if a child makes a little mistake, he will be beaten like that. Xiaoan didn't understand too much, and Mu Yangling felt that it was not good to hide it from the child, but it was also not good to involve him in the grievances between adults. So she could only tell him that his grandfather and uncle treated his father badly in the past, but this was a grievance between adults, and he didn't need to take care of it now, as long as he grew up well. As for the matter of marrying a daughter-in-law, let's wait until he grows up. Mu Yangling rolled his eyes and said, if you still like someone like fourth aunt when you grow up, I'll be your matchmaker. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1149. Andre brought Antonio to visit as promised. Qi Heiran knew that there were a few children waiting to see him, so he was happy to turn a blind eye. As soon as Andre and Antonio entered the door, they saw the smiling little bear and a young man behind him. Andre had seen all the children of Qi Heiran and Fan Zijian, and it was obvious that this young man was not a child of the two families. After going back yesterday, Andre asked people to learn about Daki's customs. He knew that the second day of the Lunar New Year was also an important day. Except for girls returning to their natal homes, only important guests would come to the door. And this young man who has never met before has an extraordinary bearing, and can stand here with the attitude of the master. Obviously he is not an idler. Thinking of Qi Heiran's status, Andre nodded very seriously to this young master. Xiao Xiong introduced with a smile, this is my cousin. It's making your lord and mister and better to sit in the flower hall first. My father is busy with important things now, so he has to wait for a while. Andre expressed his understanding. Chi Wenkin's posture was dignified, and he entertained the two of them as a host in a gentle manner. As soon as Andre and Antonio sat down, Chi Wenkin excused that he had to leave for a while. Xiao Xiang nodded with a smile, and took the initiative to provoke the topic to divert the two people's attention. As soon as Chi Wenkin exited the flower hall, he ran up and ran towards Baoxia. Chi Wenmai was spinning around anxiously. When he saw the third brother coming in, he rushed up to meet him and asked, "How are you doing? Have you seen any foreigners?" Chi Wenkin nodded excitedly. "It turns out that there are really people with blue eyes in this world, but they do smell very strong. I don't know how many spices they wear. Don't they really not take a bath?" Chi Wenmai's eyes widened. "Foreigners are so rich. You must know that the price of spices is very low. Would you rather use spices to cover the smell than take a bath?" The tiger head and the little lion smiled unkindly, and said meaningfully, "If you have smelled the smell of foreigners who don't wear spice bags, you will know that it doesn't make much difference whether they take a bath or not." Xiao Bao slapped him with a slap. "Don't make fun of people. It's not a gentleman's job to judge people's merits." The younger ones stood at attention immediately, but they still kept winking. Obviously they didn't care about being a gentleman. Xiaobao was very helpless, but Chi Wenmai jumped up excitedly and shouted, "It's up to me next, brother, take me there quickly." Xiaobao could only lead them to the flower hall. Although Xiaobao only stayed in Guangzhou for half a year, Andre still remembered him. Seeing that he brought another curious child over, the corners of his mouth could not help but twitch. Yes, it looks strange. Although Chi Wenkin behaved politely, and it was not impolite to look at them, but he and Antonio were not fools, so it was natural to see that the child's star-like eyes were full of curiosity, and he also noticed his inadvertent sizing. After all, the boy left, and now he brought another child, so they are being visited as a rarity. Andre is okay, he is a businessman, he runs around the world. Naturally he is often regarded as a rare onlooker, so he just smiled and sat on a chair for the kid to watch. But Antonio is different. He is the first time to go to the East. In the Western countries, his status is distinguished, everyone looks like that, and he will only be looked at with respect. When he arrived in the Eastern country, not only did he visit and receive children, but he even became the object of being surrounded by children, so his face suddenly became ugly, and he looked at Chi Wenmai almost slyly. It was the first time for little Wenmi to see such a look in his eyes, and he was shocked. If he hadn't reminded himself to pay attention to the prince's demeanor at all times, he might lose his composure on the spot. Xiaobao calmly stepped forward to stand in front of Wenmi, and smiled at Antonio. "This is the Spanish envoy. I have heard of you for a long time." Xiao Xiang also put down his teacup. Although he still had a smile on his face, his eyes were a bit cold. He said to Andre, "This is my eldest cousin. Mr. N should be familiar with him. He is also His Royal Highness the Crown Prince." Andre and Antonio were taken aback for a moment, apparently not expecting Xiaobao's identity. Looking at him carefully, he was indeed similar to the Crown Prince at the palace banquet. The position of the Western mission was too far back. Not only Chi Wenjin and the others couldn't see these Westerners clearly, but these Westerners also couldn't see clearly the people sitting in front. Andre was able to spot Chi Heiran and Mu Yangling at a glance. First, he knew in advance that they were sitting there, and second, they were too familiar with each other. And other people, especially children, they really don't pay attention. Since this cousin is the prince, what about the identity of the one just now and the one now? Andre and Antonio guessed that the two were the princes at once, and Andre immediately smiled all over his face, hoping that His Royal Highness the Prince would not mind Antonio's attitude just now. It's impossible for Xiaobao not to mind. Wenmi is his younger brother, but he was so intimidated by the other party after he glanced at him curiously. The child is his own good, and Xiaobao is as good as his father in protecting the calf. Xiaobao decided that no matter what the purpose of their trip was, he would not satisfy them easily. If Andre knew what Xiaobao was thinking, he would cry to death. Antonio saw that the time was almost up, so he asked, "I wonder when we can see Prince Rong." Little Xiong took out his pocket watch to check the time, and said with a smile, "Soon, my father should have come." They had discussed the time before, and they had also read it, and Chi Heiran should be replaced, but they changed their minds now. Xiaobao glanced at Xiao Xiong. Xiao Xiong and Xiaobao have cooperated for many years, and he understood it with just one look. Little Bear immediately switched modes, straightened his back, leaned forward slightly, stared at Antonio and asked, "I don't know why your lord is looking for my father." Little Bear smiled and said, "His Royal Highness and I started to participate in the competition last year. Political affairs, maybe we can help with one or two." Chi Heiran, who had just wandered to the door and was about to enter, paused when he heard this, thought for a while, and stopped moving. Andre and Antonio in the room looked at each other, both hesitated. These two children were too young, and they were not sure whether the other could make the decision. Xiao Xiong smiled and explained, "Is it because you care about our age? Mr. An has been visiting Daki all these years. You should know that we are not too young in Daki at our age, and we can already run our family and run the country, and I followed my family last year. The father is going to fight, and His Royal Highness has already started to supervise the country." Andre nodded slightly to Antonio. Han Chinese children have indeed started to get in touch with foreign affairs at their age. Antonio smiled and had a better attitude towards the two of them. Compared with negotiating with the sophisticated Prince Rong, they naturally preferred these two fledgling children. They only started to get in touch with political affairs last year, and they must be eager to do something to prove themselves. He has seen a lot of such children, and Antonio finally feels better after being watched. Xiao Xiong glanced at Xiao Bao in the blink of an eye, and the two of them separated tacitly after their eyes met. They are young, but they have a lot of experience, and in terms of tacit understanding, the two people in front of them are not as good as them. Chi Heiran outside the door stood and listened for a while, then turned and left, and after walking a long way, he beckoned a servant and said, "Go to the flower hall, just say that the master has something urgent to go out, let those two foreigners have something to do with the prince. Let me tell you first, just tell me later." The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1150. Andre and Antonio knew that Chi Heiran didn't value them when they heard the message from the servants. Although they felt a little depressed, they couldn't do anything about it, because the Han people really didn't pay much attention to them Westerners. This also made the two of them pay more attention to the two children in front of them. Andre simply started a discussion with the two of them. In fact, their purpose was very simple. They still hoped that Daki would be able to exempt domestic goods from taxes and provide a place to supply and rest ships. Chi Wenmai came here to see the strange things. Seeing his elder brother and his cousin talking about serious matters, he could only sit on the chair honestly and stare at them back and forth. Xiaobao and Xiao Xiong looked at each other, both were a little embarrassed, and told Andre that the ministers in the DPRK looked down on businessmen, and they didn't approve of the opening of the sea to trade, and now it is even more impossible to propose tax-free trade. And their second condition involves territorial integrity. Today Daki still has a large area of lost land occupied by Xixia, so the ministers are very sensitive to this, and it is impossible to agree. Unless the other party can come up with the same conditions in exchange. This is obviously impossible. Since Daki opened the sea ban, a large number of Daki fleets have flooded into the west, bringing precious silk, porcelain, and tea. If the Daki fleet is tax-free, what else can their country receive? Tariff. In the final analysis, it was because of the unequal trade that Daki sent 10 shipments of goods to them, but only brought back 2 shipments of goods from them, and the rest was a large amount of silver and gold. Andre is more eager to change the situation. Antonio has been being hit all this time, seeing Daki's big piece of cake but unable to eat it. It can be seen that he is anxious in his heart. Andre has made this request 3 times, and was rejected every time. This time, he didn't have much hope. Hearing this, he couldn't help sighing, turned around and took out a box from the attendant, and said regretfully, "I wanted to be here after the matter is completed. I will present this item to the queen of your country, but since your country has no intentions, then forget it." Xiaobao showed interest in a timely manner. "Oh, I don't know if I would be honored to see what's inside." Andre smiled, slowly opened the box, and looked confidently at Xiaobao and Xiaoxiang. Both of them looked at the things in the box in surprise. Xiaobao was surprised. "Is it a gem?" Little Bear looked at it twice, and after appreciating it, he nodded and said, "It's sapphire, very beautiful." Andre felt that they must be ignorant. This is a rare gemstone. It is not only pure in color, as blue as the blue sky, but also very large, and it is perfectly cut. He and the ministers in the country fought for a long time to get it. Xiaobao and Xiaoxiang are indeed ignorant. Gemstones are things for women. They don't know much about gemstones at their age. Not only them, but also Mu Yangling don't know much about gemstones. Let her say how big a gemstone is. Rare, Mu Yangling really doesn't know, she can only judge whether she likes it or not. However, it would be different if the other party gave jade. Chinese people like jade. Jade is a gentleman, suitable for both men and women. Xiaobao and Xiaoxiang also know jade well, so they can comment on the jade they gave as a gift, and the gems they gave. Xiaobao thought about it hard. It seems that there are many such gems in the warehouse, but I don't know if they are so big. Is this thing very precious? Little Xiang thought to himself, gemstones are expensive. It is said that a better one can sell for dozens or even hundreds of taels of silver. I just don't know how the quality of this one is, but do they look like they are short of money? Unless you can't buy this thing even if you have money, there is really no need to present it to the emperor's aunt. Andre and Antonio knew that they were ignorant after seeing their reactions, and their faces darkened, and they couldn't help explaining, "This sapphire is the rarest one in Spain. It has the reputation of the eye of the ocean, and it is only the most beautiful in the world. A beautiful person deserves to wear it." Xiaobao and Xiaoxiang suddenly realized that they were just accessories for beauties. Fortunately, Andre doesn't know how to read minds, otherwise he would definitely spit out his heart. Seeing that the two were still unmoved, Andre and Antonio looked at each other helplessly. They were afraid that they had found the wrong person. The other party did not know how to appreciate gems and the importance of gifts. How would they go on talking? "You should look for Princess Rong, she is a woman, and she will definitely make this gem play its due role." But soon the two children gave them another hope. Xiaobao said, "My fourth uncle likes your cannons very much, Mr. N. We tried the cannons you bought for my fourth uncle last time. We plan to have more, equip a few sets. If it is something like this, I think my fourth uncle will definitely persuade my father to exempt from tax." Xiaobao smiled embarrassedly when he said this. "My father is very fond of fourth uncle, and he will agree to everything that fourth uncle says, and the ministers are often helpless about it, so if you can satisfy my fourth uncle, he will definitely be willing to help you of." Andre said helplessly, "I mentioned this matter to the prince when the cannon was traded last time, but the prince did not agree." Chi Heiran blocked back with a word, still asking them to treat Daki's merchant ships equally. Little Xiang hesitated, "Maybe I can ask my concubine mother." Andre's eyes lit up. It is said that Prince Rong loves his princess the most, and he will agree to everything his princess says, and he has seen that princess's power. "I can't thank Spain enough." Little Xiang said, "Mr. N, don't have too much hope. My mother and concubine always don't care about outside affairs." Andre immediately took out another box from the attendant and said with a smile, This is a gift I prepared for the princess. Although this ruby is not as big as the blue one, it is still very rare. I don't know if the prince would like it. Can you recommend us sometime? Little Xiong and Xiaobao looked at each other, nodded and said, take a seat, both of you, and have some tea first. We'll come as soon as we go. Xiaobao also carried out the stunned fourth brother. Qi Wenmai didn't come to his senses until he was approaching the side room, and shouted, brother, do we really want to allow foreigners to go through customs without tax? But it's not fair to my Daki fleet. Xiao Xiong nodded his forehead with a smile, and said, that depends on the product. That's right. Xiaobao and Xiao Xiong looked at each other with a smile, and said, if they hadn't bullied fourth brother, I wouldn't have thought of cheating on them. It is of course impossible to fully switch duty-free, but what if only some commodities are exempted? The two went to discuss with Mu Yangling. Qi Heiran was also at Mu Yangling's place, curiously asking Xiaoan why he didn't play with Hutu and the others. Xiaoan smiled shyly, and peeked at fourth aunt. Qi Heiran became even more curious, and was about to press him, when Xiao Bao led a group of children over. Qi Heiran suddenly had a headache. It's not good to have too many children. A word from one person can make people die. Qi Heiran bit the bullet and asked, why are you here? Aren't you talking with Andre and the others? You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1151. You mean partial tax exemption? Mu Yangling looked at the two children in astonishment. This is too amazing. How did these two boys think of this? It's not that she didn't think of making such a proposal before, but firstly, she is not good at economic facts, and secondly, Qi Heiran and others don't pay much attention to it, so she hasn't figured out how to propose it yet. Unexpectedly, it was brought up by two children now. Mu Yangling was overjoyed, took Xiaobao and Xiaoxiang's hands and said, you guys are amazing. How did the melon seeds grow on this little head? Both Xiaobao and Xiaoxiang bowed their heads in embarrassment, but fourth aunt, this is a temporary decision, and we haven't selected which ones can be exempted from tax and which ones can't be exempted, so. Xiaobao and Xiaoxiang only proposed such a thing to deceive each other, and they have little knowledge of foreign trade, but they still have basic common sense. Foreigners' spices, gemstones, ivory, etc. cannot be exempted from tax, but others. Qi Heiran immediately became serious, and said seriously, cannons can be exempted from tax, but all weapons can only be traded to the court, including but not limited to cannons, muskets, sabers, etc. Wen Chen, please don't answer this matter first, only give it to the imperial court. They put forward a general scope, and let people from the Ministry of Rights, the Ministry of Households and the Ministry of War negotiate with them afterwards. Xiao Bao nodded and asked, what about our tax exemption proposal? It's best to be handicrafts, Mu Yangling said, and the imported tax-free products should mostly be based on raw materials, such as grain, wood, ore, etc. Mu Yangling only said one thing, and Xiaobao and Xiaoxiang immediately understood, this is to use their resources to support our people in Daki. Mu Yangling nodded, and he didn't feel any psychological burden on them. The rest of the little ones were confused. The tiger head habitually didn't know how to look at the little lion, and the little lion turned to look at Xiaoan. Xiaoan woke up from the everyone is so smart and explained in a low voice, Daki now has a large trade balance, with more exports and less imports, and most of the goods shipped back are gold and silver. This thing looks good, but in fact money is money, and it is bought from the people of Daki when it goes on like this. With more money, Daki did not gain anything, but lost a lot of silk, porcelain, and tea. The complexity of the import-export ratio is that modern economics PhD.S can't handle it, let alone Xiaoan, a kid. but he will look at the problem with the simplest eyes. The fourth ant said that apart from their own functions, gold and silver are the most important currency representatives. It is just money, which is a measure of the value of trading items. If Daki could only bring back a large amount of gold and silver from abroad, explaining their function, they just obtained something to measure the value of the traded items, and they were just a bunch of numbers when they did not use gold and silver to buy things. The trade surplus and deficit are too large. Not only the Western countries are not willing, but Daki is also not happy. Western countries used a large amount of gold and silver to import all kinds of high-end consumables such as silk, porcelain, and tea from Daki, but their own products could not be sold, which also harmed their interests. But now the initiative is in the hands of Daki, so they have the right to speak about duty-free products. When Xiao Bao and Xiao Xiang heard Xiao An's explanation to the younger brothers, they immediately pulled him into the discussion group, and the three of them discussed together. The tiger heads were unwilling to be lonely, and stood by to help them with various ideas, such as tax-free items, ranging from rice, wheat, flour, soybeans, and various meats to cannons, muskets, etc. Xiaoan took a pen and recorded them one by one, planning to screen them again afterwards. The children were still interested, and Mu Yangling also watched with relish. Qi Heiran suddenly asked, "Is it really okay for you to throw the guests in the flower hall like this?" The room fell silent. Xiao Bao and Xiao Xiang jumped up. "We forgot." The two ran to the door and ran back to Mu Yangling. "We promised to let them see you." Qi Heiran rolled his eyes, got up and said, "Okay, I'll go with you," and I said I stopped it, but I didn't stop it in the end. Xiao Bao admired fourth uncle's daring to sacrifice his image. Qi Heiran met his eyes and patted him on the head, saying, "Don't think about it, hurry up and open the way. Anyway, the whole world knows that he is fearful of himself, so it doesn't matter if he shows it in front of foreigners." Mu Yangling followed behind them with a smile, and took Qi Heiran's hand. Qi Heiran's face brightened, and he lowered his wide sleeves to cover the hands of the two, grabbed her hand, and followed the two children to the flower hall without looking sideways. Andre and Antonio were waiting impatiently, and when they saw Xiao Bao and Xiao Xiang coming in with ugly faces, they were slightly surprised, and then overjoyed when they saw Qi Heiran and his wife following behind. Although Qi Heiran's arrival was an accident, it also showed that he attached great importance to his wife. If they can win Mu Yangling, the success of the negotiation will be very high. The two looked at each other, and both looked at Mu Yangling with the greatest sincerity. Antonio may not have noticed, but in just a few days, the pride he has always been proud of has been worn away. Before coming, the four of them decided on the division of labor. Mu Yangling will play the role of a strong wife who loves children. Xiao Bao and Xiao Xiang are teenagers who are eager to make meritorious deeds, and Qi Heiran is a fearful prince who loves his wife. Lai and the others didn't like it very much, but they had to give in and start negotiating with the other party about tax exemption. Needless to say, Qi Heiran, Xiao Bao and Xiaoxiang's acting ability is not bad. These two boys used to cheat people a lot, so they have learned to open their eyes and talk nonsense. Mu Yangling can't match them, but Andre and Antonio didn't take it to heart, because Qi Heiran kept staring at her or yelling at her, saying that this was an important matter for the court and she was a woman and could not interfere. But Mu Yangling stared back without fear under the eyes of the two children. Baba, Qi Heiran could only give in. Andre and Antonio were already stunned by the way Qi Heiran and his wife got along, so they really didn't pay attention to Mu Yangling's slightly unnatural expression. It is said that Prince Rong is fearful of internal affairs, but he does not know that the Han people are fearful of internal affairs, which is different from the domestic fearful husbands that Antonio knows. Oh, what happened to France made Louis fearful. As long as his wife stood up, he didn't even dare to say anything, Antonio said in confusion on the way back, but this prince dared to attack his wife. Why did you agree to her unreasonable request when you yelled and slapped the table? The image of Mu Yangling carrying the cannon up the mountain flashed in Andrei's mind, and he blushed and said, maybe it's because his wife is very powerful, he only dared to slap the table like this, but he didn't dare to actually do it. Antonio shook his head slowly and said, no, because he loves her. Chihayron looked at his wife with gentle eyes. Even if he slapped the table and stared, the love in his eyes never diminished. Compromise because of love, this kind of deal is more stable. Although it is only partially tax-free, it can be regarded as opening a gap. As long as we take this step, we can go further in the future. We must quickly list the tax-free goods to deal with Daki officials. In the end, Chihayron only agreed to part of the tax exemption, but the request was made by both parties. However, in order to show the emperor's favor, Chihayron said that Daki's best-selling items will not enter the ranks of tax exemptions, and the list of Daki's tax exemptions will be less than that of Spain. Try to benefit them. Can get such an answer. Andrei and Antonio are already very satisfied. The reborn wife is farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1152. Fan Zijian came to Wang Mansion to pick up Xiaoan after sending Xiao Xia and Xiao Fu back to Fan Mansion after lunch at Xiao's family. At this time, the children were still immersed in the excitement of cheating Andrei and Antonio, and the collective was very excited. Fan Zijian saw that his son's face was flushed with excitement, and he was in high spirits, so he couldn't help but turned his head and asked Chihayron, what bad things did these children do? Are you sure they were the outsiders who tricked them, not that they were tricked by outsiders? Chihayron said complacently, are our children so stupid? Don't worry, Aling and I are here to guard the gate. Then I'm even more worried. Fan Zijian said quietly. Chihayron glared at him, while Mu Yangling said from the side, Xiao Bao and Xiao Xiong raised their heads, and Xiaoan perfected it. Tell him what Xiaoan said to Hu Diou and the others. Fan Zijian looked a little proud, although there are still some shortcomings, it is rare for him at this age. Chihayron was displeased with his smug little appearance, and repeatedly emphasized, this was first proposed by Xiao Bao and Xiao Xiong, and I don't know what their little heads are thinking about these ideas. Mu Yangling ignored the two naive people, and recruited the children into the room, saying, Xiao Bao, Xiao Xiong, Xiaoan, this matter was proposed by you, since you have already had a general idea, then each of you should write a copy. Send the booklet to the emperor, and I will suggest that you participate in the negotiations with Spain, even if you can't speak, you can just watch and learn. The other children immediately lined up and looked at Mu Yangling with piercing eyes, hoping that she would look at them quickly. Mu Yangling set his sights on them as expected, and said, Wen Di, Tiger Head, Little Lion, you are no longer young, and you should also write an article. The topic is not limited, but it must be an external topic. You can do whatever you have in mind. Mu Yangling smiled, I won't show this article to your husband, I will review it myself. The three children became happy, which meant that they could write whatever they wanted, and they would not be slapped in the palms of their hands, nor would they be kept in mind by their husbands. The three little heads quickly got together to discuss. Qi Wenqian and Qi Wenmai looked up at Mu Yangling. These two boys were younger. Mu Yangling rubbed their heads and said, you guys also write an article, because you are still young, and I don't limit the topic, and there is no set scope, you can write whatever you want, but it must be related to today's events, no matter what it is related to. The two also bowed their heads in thought. The twins squeezed in from behind, grabbed their mother's knees and said anxiously, there are still us, there are still us. Mu Yangling hugged them and said with a smile, you guys, you also have homework. Let your father teach you to recognize everyone's names and the names of those two foreigners at night, okay? Little Beizai and Beizu both felt that their mother was underestimating them, and said unhappily, we also want to write articles. Can you write? Little Leopard and Beizu were depressed, why are we so small? Chihayron heard it from behind, he burst out laughing, stepped forward to hug the two of them and said, "That's because the mother who sent the child likes you, so she kept you by my side the longest. If it weren't for the sincerity of father and mother, I wouldn't be able to ask you." As soon as the words came out, before the twins had time to express their joy, the tiger-headed lion and the little lion scrambled to shout, "No, Imperial Physician Wan clearly said that the child is the result of the combination of sperm and egg, and it was not sent by the mother-in-law at all." "Daddy, you are so stupid. The words of gods and Buddhas are obviously deceptive, yet you actually believe them." Chi Heiran. For the first time, Chi Heiran felt that the courses that Aling taught them were so annoying. Fan Zijian glanced at a certain stupid father, got up and greeted his son, "We're going back, your fourth uncle will come to visit your house tomorrow, you are the little master, you have to prepare something for entertaining the guests." Mu Yangling called the father and son to stop, and waved to the children with a smile, "Come on, line up, fourth aunt will ask you one last question, answer it before leaving." Mu Yangling first asked Little Xiong, "Little Xiong, what kind of wife do you want to marry in the future?" Little Xiong said without even thinking about it, "Marry someone who looks like a mother." Mu Yangling smiled with satisfaction, and turned to Xiaobao. Xiaobao was a little shy, and whispered, "I also like someone who looks like my fourth aunt." Now there is no need for Mu Yangling to ask. The tiger head and the little lion scrambled to say that they would marry a girl like their mother, even when Qian and Wenmi shouted loudly that they would like a little girl like their fourth aunt. Qi Wensu stepped forward very seriously, "Fourth aunt, I like someone like you. Does your natal family have any nieces or nieces like you?" Both Chi Heiran and Fan Zijian were stunned. Mu Yangling smiled and said, "Not yet, but maybe in the future, if he can wait." The tiger head and the little lion had already got together and bit their ears. "Mother is so strange today, why did you ask us this question?" The little lion said firmly, "It must be because we are afraid that we will not love her when we grow up. Dr. Wang said that women will be anxious and insecure when they reach a certain age." Huda patted his chest rejoicingly, "Fortunately, I'm smart, otherwise we will have no peace when mother gets angry." The little lion nodded sympathetically. "It's fierce when my mother gets angry." The two children were hiding in the distance and whispering, just not far behind Fan Zijian and Chi Heiran. Fan Zijian turned to ask them, "Then what kind of little girl do you like?" Huda gave a hush, glanced at his mother secretly, and said in a low voice, "I like second aunt like that, she is very gentle to brother Xiaoan." But the little lion said, "I haven't made up my mind yet, but I definitely don't like my mother like that, I'm afraid of being beaten." Fan Zijian couldn't help laughing, and looked at Mu Yangling. Her hearing was so good, there was no reason why she didn't hear it. Mu Yangling did hear it. She looked at Xiaoan and asked, "Xiaoan, what kind of wife do you want to marry in the future?" Xiaoan glanced at his father, braved his gaze, and said, "I like fourth aunt." Now Chi Heiran burst out laughing. "I said, what did you say to your fourth aunt today? So you were talking about this. If you like it, you like it, but it is impossible for you to have someone like your fourth aunt gone." Fan Zijian frowned, and looked at Mu Yangling. "What did Xiaoan tell you?" Mu Yangling raised his eyebrows and looked back at him. "What do you think?" Fan Zijian gritted his teeth at his son, "You brat." Mu Yangling stopped in front of Xiaoan and said provocatively, "Xiaoan is honest, bullying children is not what a gentleman does." Fan Zijian hummed, "When did I say I was a gentleman?" A group of children watched the two of them back and forth, holding their breath nervously. Chi Heiran looked at his brother and then at his wife, stepped forward decisively and pulled Fan Zijian, and walked out with his shoulders. "Let's go, don't rush home, let's have a drink first."